On a crisp autumn morning, Elena stumbled upon a stray dog, its fur matted and eyes filled with wariness. Moved by compassion, she coaxed the dog into her car and drove straight to the local vet, hoping for a miracle to save the creature that looked at her as if she were its last hope. But the moment they arrived at the vet's, the dog's demeanor shifted dramatically, growling at anyone who came close. Welcome to Wonderbot Animals. I don't know why it's acting this way, Elena said, as she desperately tried to hold the dog still. It was barking and growling at everyone close to it, showing its teeth in defense. Somehow, Elena was the only one the dog tolerated, so she did her best not to let anyone get hurt. As soon as the dog attacked someone, its fate would be drastically changed. The vet quickly grabbed a muzzle and tried to place it around the dog's mouth, but it was using every bit of strength it had not to let that happen. Finally, the dog's energy began to wear thin, and the vet was able to put the muzzle in place. After that, the dog was even more stressed than before, so the vet had to sedate it. When the dog's body finally began to relax, Elena sighed in relief, thinking it was over now. But when she looked at the vet's face, she knew there was more to come. "This dog needs to be put to sleep immediately," he coldly said, and he walked out of the room. "Wait, you can't mean that!" Elena tried to yell after the vet, but he had made up his mind. Elena looked at the vet's assistants left inside the room for help, but they all looked at the ground in return, too scared or ashamed to go against the vet. Elena couldn't believe it. Sure, the dog wasn't the nicest dog she had ever met, but it hadn't bitten anyone. And on top of that, he let Elena get close so he could learn to open up to other people too. One of the assistants was already prepping the lethal amount of anesthetic to put the dog down, so Elena threw herself over the dog so no one could get close to him. "Get away!" she yelled, tears filling her eyes. "Get away!" she screamed even louder. She began to growl and bark, just like the dog had done, and eventually all of the assistants left. She softly sobbed as she hugged the dog, her mind racing with what she should do. She couldn't let the dog die, that wouldn't be right. But she couldn't believe that the vet would throw away an animal's life like that just because it was a little harder to calm him down. No, Elena had to save this innocent life no matter what. Luckily, the dog wasn't very big, so while it was still sedated, she wrapped it under her jacket, made herself cry again, and ran out of the room, straight through the waiting area and out of the building. She didn't look up once and held her jacket in her arms tightly. She bolted straight to her car, placed the jacket with the dog on the passenger seat, and raced home. Her heart was beating so fast it almost jumped out of her chest, but it was all worth it when she looked down at the sleeping dog next to her. "I'll call you Grumpy, like an old man," she said with a smile on her face. But little did she know that she had just done something that she would later greatly regret. The dog began to wake up after she put it on a little dog bed next to the couch in her home. She had removed the muzzle so he wouldn't be too stressed, but the memories of the last moments in the vet's clinic must have been still in the dog's mind because it immediately showed the same aggression. He. "It's me," she softly said, hoping her calm voice would soothe the dog. Its body was shaking, and she had never seen so much fear in such a small animal. Its pupils were dilated so widely that its eyes almost looked like they were pitch black. She quickly placed a bowl of water next to the dog bed, together with a bowl of food, and walked away. She knew the best thing she could give the dog was space. She thought back to this morning when she had found the poor animal at the side of the road. It had looked scared, but not as scared as it looked now. The vet had really done a number on the dog's mental state, and she resented him for it. Meanwhile at the vet, they quickly realized Elena had taken the dog. Well, stolen, actually, because the dog didn't belong to her yet, and the vet had written the dog down as a danger to itself and others that needed to be put to sleep immediately. So she wasn't only putting herself in danger, but others as well. That's what they believed at least. The vet wasted no time after realizing the dog was gone. He picked up the phone and dialed the police, describing Elena as a woman in her mid-30s of average height and build who had just stolen a dangerous animal. His voice was firm and his resolve clear as he reported the theft, emphasizing the dog's potential danger to the community. The police jotted down the details, but the vet had hit a snag. Elena had come in as a walk-in, leaving no contact information behind. All the police had was a description and the urgency in the vet's voice, which painted a picture of a desperate situation. They assured him they'd do their best with the limited info. The vet remembered the clinic's security cameras. He pulled up the footage showing Elena's hurried exit. The video was clear, her arms wrapped tightly around something under her jacket. He pointed this out to the officers, confirming his earlier description of the situation as they watched the screen closely. Before the police left, the vet made a point to repeat his warning about the dog's nature. He described the animal as very dangerous, possibly distorting the truth about its behavior. The officers nodded, taking notes, their minds now filled with an image of a menacing creature capable of harm. Seeking more leads, the police decided to collect fingerprints from the operating table and other surfaces Elena might have touched. They hoped to identify her through their database. The officers carefully dusted for prints, discussing potential matches and the steps they'd take once they found a match. The police faced a setback. Elena's fingerprints returned no matches in their database, nor did any photos or personal information pop up. They scoured records and checked for any trace of her identity, but nothing surfaced. This lack of history made the search for Elena and the alleged dangerous dog even more challenging. Meanwhile, Elena lounged on her couch, flipping through channels on her TV. The house was quiet, just the hum of the television and the soft breathing of the dog beside her. She was oblivious to the storm brewing outside her door, her mind far from the idea that she was now a wanted individual. Her tranquility was shattered when a news report flashed on the screen. The headline screamed of a woman stealing a dangerous dog, complete with security footage of Elena rushing out of the vet clinic. Her heart skipped a beat as the anchor urged viewers to report any sightings. Stunned, she quickly turned off the TV. Elena's mind raced as she peered through the blinds. Her neighborhood seemed quiet, but paranoia gnawed at her. She locked all the doors and drew the curtains tightly. She couldn't risk being seen or betrayed by a nosy neighbor. With every little noise, her heart pounded harder, the reality of her situation sinking in. Her phone rang, slicing through the silence of the house. It was her mother, her voice tense. "Did you see the news?" she blurted out. Elena's voice trembled as she replied, "They're lying about the dog, Mum." She explained the misunderstanding, insisting that the dog wasn't as dangerous as they claimed. Her mother listened, worry etched in her tone. Her mother's voice was heavy with disappointment and worry. "Elena, you have to leave," she urged. "If you want to keep the dog, go to our family cottage in the woods and stay there for a while." Her words, filled with an unusual firmness, sent a chill down Elena's spine, making the gravity of her situation painfully clear. Elena pondered, turning herself in and clearing up the misunderstanding, but her mother quickly dismissed the idea. "The police won't believe you now," she insisted, referencing how thoroughly the vet had convinced them of the dog's aggression. The finality in her mother's tone left Elena feeling trapped, her options dwindling rapidly. Elena knew her mother was right, but the thought of running from the law was daunting. It felt wrong, like she was becoming a real criminal. Still, with every other door seemingly closed, she felt pushed into a corner. The idea of running felt like the only viable path left to her now. She threw clothes, essentials, and dog supplies into bags with trembling hands. Her mind was a whirlwind of confusion and fear. Why was the vet so adamant about putting the dog down? She wondered aloud as she zipped her bag shut. The dog hadn't shown aggression towards her, deepening her confusion and resolve. The dog, still asleep, was gently placed in its carrier. As Elena prepared to leave, her heart pounded against her chest. She glanced out the window to see police cars with flashing lights approaching. It's too late, she thought, frozen in fear as she watched them draw near. As the police cars sped past her driveway, Elena's heart pounded. She peeked in the rearview mirror and saw them stop at her house. Realizing they hadn't seen her, she pressed the gas pedal to the floor, steering the car onto the highway, her mind a blur as she escaped the immediate threat. A nervous giggle escaped her as the adrenaline faded. She felt a momentary rush of relief, thinking she had outsmarted the police. But as the miles stretched on, the weight of her situation settled in. She was now on the run, all because of a stray dog she couldn't bear to let die. Elena drove relentlessly towards the cottage, not stopping for anything. The 3-hour drive loomed long and daunting. Fear of being caught on a gas station camera kept her from stopping. She gripped the steering wheel tighter with each passing mile, the solitude of the road a stark contrast to her swirling thoughts. Now that she had fled, Elena knew the police would only intensify their efforts. They'd surely visit her parents next, questioning them. She silently prayed her mother would keep their secret safe, not revealing anything about the cottage or her sudden departure, maintaining a sliver of hope for safety. At the cottage, Elena released the dog from its carrier. Surprisingly, he seemed calmer, quickly adapting to the unfamiliar surroundings. He sniffed around curiously, exploring every nook. The fear that had once consumed his eyes was slowly melting away, replaced by a tentative sense of security as he settled into his new home. As the sun set, the chill inside the cottage deepened. Elena busied herself making the bed and brewing a cup of tea, trying to stave off the cold. The minimal electricity barely warmed the room, leaving her breath visible in the air. She settled under the blankets, hoping for a bit of warmth in the freezing night. Waking in the middle of the night, Elena shivered from the cold. She felt a warm, small body snuggled against her and realized it was Grumpy. The dog's calm presence and gentle breathing reassured her. That's not an aggressive dog, she thought, feeling a mix of gratitude and frustration as she drifted back to sleep. The morning sun streamed through the window, waking Elena. Grumpy was already up, tail wagging, standing by the bed, looking at her expectantly. It was clear he was ready for his morning walk, and Elena couldn't help but smile at his eager demeanor. She got up, ready to start the day with a stroll in the woods. In the forest, Elena felt a sense of freedom watching Grumpy dart around. She threw sticks, and he chased them happily, never showing a hint of aggression. As it was time to head back, she called for him, but he didn't appear. Panic set in as she searched, calling his name into the quiet woods. "Grumpy?" Elena's calls grew more desperate. Suddenly, the crackle of a police radio cut through the silence. She quickly ducked behind a bush, heart racing. From her hiding spot, she could see the cottage and the approaching figures clad in police uniforms. She watched, holding her breath, hoping they hadn't spotted her yet. Police officers swarmed Elena's cottage like they were on a high-stakes mission. From her hiding spot, she watched helplessly as they barged in. Her heart sank when she saw one officer emerge, holding a calm Grumpy in his arms. Each officer's face was stern as they searched, leaving no stone unturned. Elena's mind raced as she contemplated her next move. Turning herself in meant possibly never seeing Grumpy again. "No," she whispered to herself. "I have to find a way to talk to the vet, change his mind." She knew it was a long shot, but she couldn't give up on Grumpy now. With every minute feeling like an hour, Elena stayed hidden while the police continued their search. It pained her not to intervene, not to shout out against the accusations and the search, but she knew any rash action could worsen things. Finally, the officers left, the silence after their departure heavy and foreboding. Elena approached the cottage with trepidation, her steps hesitant. The sight of yellow crime scene tape across her door overwhelmed her, tears streaming down her face. The quiet, peaceful refuge she had known was now marked by the chaos of the day. She stood there, crying, lost in the ruins of her sanctuary. Elena couldn't bring herself to look inside the cottage. The thought of the disarray that awaited her was too much. She imagined her belongings tossed around, drawers emptied, her life laid bare and scrambled by searching hands. The violation of her private space by the police left her feeling exposed and vulnerable. Elena approached her mother's house with a mix of fear and hope, praying the police had moved on. To her dismay, a police car sat parked out front, an officer inside. She couldn't risk the front door. They were clearly still on her trail. Heart pounding, she knew her only chance was the small back window she used as a teen. Elena parked her car a safe distance away and crept around to the back of the house. With practiced ease, she slipped through the small window, landing softly inside. It was like stepping back in time, sneaking in after curfew. The familiar surroundings brought a fleeting sense of safety as she quietly made her way to her old room. Inside, Elena stood frozen as her mother turned, a basket of laundry in her arms. Their eyes met, and for a moment, time seemed to stop. Her mother's expression shifted from shock to relief in an instant. Dropping the laundry, she rushed over, enveloping Elena in a tight embrace, murmuring words of relief and urgent concern. "Oh, Elena, thank goodness you are safe," her mother sighed, holding her at arm's length to better look at her. "Where is the dog?" she asked, her voice a mix of worry and curiosity. Elena's face fell as she began to explain the tumultuous events that had unfolded since she last saw her mother. Elena's story poured out, the details spilling over each other. Her mother listened, her face a portrait of concern and sorrow. Once Elena finished, her mother simply nodded, offering practical support, a hot meal and fresh clothes. "You're doing the right thing," she affirmed, providing not just physical sustenance but emotional strength as well. After finishing her meal, Elena turned to her mother with a desperate plan. "Can you drive me to the vet? He knows my car." Her mother didn't hesitate, agreeing immediately. They both understood the stakes were high, but it was their only chance to save Grumpy without attracting further attention. Her mother's car sat quietly in the garage, a silent ally in their plan. Elena climbed into the trunk, her heart pounding with every soft thud of the closing lid. Her mother started the car and drove off smoothly, the police officer outside none the wiser to the precious cargo sneaking past him. Elena's mother parked behind the vet's clinic, her hands trembling slightly as she tried to appear calm. She glanced continuously at the clinic's back door, waiting for an opportunity for Elena to slip inside unnoticed. Every second felt like an eternity as they waited in tense silence. It didn't take long for their chance to arrive. One of the vet's assistants stepped out for a smoke break, leaving the door ajar. As soon as the assistant was distracted, Elena swiftly moving through the open door and into the clinic's shadowy hallways. Inside, Elena's mother waited anxiously in the car, ready to flee at a moment's notice. Meanwhile, Elena crept along the clinic's corridors, her breaths shallow and quiet as she dodged staff and patients. Her every step was cautious, her ears straining for any sign that might expose her presence. Elena crept closer to the operating room, her heart pounding. She overheard an assistant question the vet. "Are we really going to put down this sweet dog?" Peeking through the door, she saw the vet with Grumpy unconscious on the table, a needle in hand, poised for something she couldn't let happen. "Yes, that dog acted horrible," the vet replied irritably, adjusting the needle. His hands were steady, his focus clear on the task at hand. Elena's heart sank as she watched through the crack of the door, knowing she had to act fast to save her beloved Grumpy from a fate he didn't deserve. "Wait!" Elena burst through the door, her voice echoing sharply in the sterile room. The vet startled, dropping the needle to the floor. "That is my dog, and he is the sweetest dog ever," she pleaded. The vet's face turned red with anger, not expecting such confrontation, yet Elena stood firm, her resolve unwavering. Elena, breathing heavily, asked the vet directly, "What is wrong with you that you want to put down this dog so badly?" The vet was taken aback by her boldness. His expression softened from anger to sadness, hinting at a deeper, more personal pain that Elena had not anticipated. "I had a dog like that," the vet suddenly confessed, his voice breaking slightly. "And it bit my daughter in the arm. She still has the scars to prove it," he added, his eyes downcast. Elena's heart softened as she realized his actions were driven not by cruelty, but by a traumatic past experience. "But Grumpy is different," Elena insisted, showing the vet a picture of the dog cuddling her at the cottage. Her voice was earnest, filled with hope. The vet hesitated, his face a mask of reluctance, but after a few moments of her pleading, he finally nodded. "Okay," he sighed, giving in to her persistence. "Fine, keep the dog. But if you ever come into my clinic with bite wounds, I'm putting him to sleep," the vet warned sternly. Elena's face lit up with relief and joy. "Thank you," she breathed out, her heart swelling with gratitude. "That will never happen," she promised fervently, her confidence in Grumpy unshakable. With Grumpy securely in her arms, Elena walked out of the clinic. The vet, perhaps moved by her dedication, had dropped the charges, and just like that, she was no longer a fugitive. It felt surreal to Elena as she stepped into the sunlight, the weight of her ordeal lifting off her shoulders. Every day, Elena and Grumpy's bond grew stronger. She marveled at how gentle and affectionate he was, always by her side, offering comfort and companionship. Grumpy's kind nature was evident in every action, proving to Elena that she had made the right decision fighting for him. Time passed, and Grumpy never showed any aggression towards Elena or anyone else. It became clear that the dog she had fought so hard to protect was indeed the loving creature she always claimed he was. Elena felt vindicated and grateful, knowing she had given Grumpy the chance he deserved to show his true gentle nature.